Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Movie Debates. In case this is your first time watching one of these, essentially this is a series on the channel where I have a friend on and we debate some kind of nerdy movie-related topic. And today we're diving into the world of horror, and we're going to debate which franchise had the best start. So essentially we're going to be looking at the best first two movies, throughout all of horror. My friend Danny has chosen a worthy adversary in Alien and Aliens, the start of the Alien franchise, and I have chosen the objectively correct pick. I have chosen Five Nights at Freddy's. Of course, we have FNAF, and then we just got FNAF 2 somewhat recently. We saw both in the movie theater together. Incredible experience, absolute cinema.
Yeah.
Usually I give my guest, first word and the chance to give an opening statement, but I am going to grab the bull by the horns on this one because I feel so strongly about this. Both of these franchises, I would argue, to a certain extent, are slashers. Right, the first Alien movie is like a slasher in space, and then the second one is kind of also a slasher in space, but with like a lot of slashers. It's more of an action slasher film, I guess. And then, Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of a slasher, but with like animatronics. And, for monster movies, I think the monsters are very important. I don't think that's a hot take by any means. And with Alien, you have some cute designs. There's some good designs with Alien. The face hugger is kind of this cool spider crab looking thing that, just dies. And then you get the xenomorph, which is, a great Alien design, don't get me wrong. That's it. Yep. You only got two. And then, I guess I'll give you the queen xenomorph. I guess you got three by the second one, but Five Nights at Freddy's? We got a lot of monsters. I mean, we got animatronics out the wazoo. We got Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica. And then, in the sequel, we got three versions of all of them. We got the withered toy version and the OG version.
Yeah.
We're not even doubling you. We're tripling you.
Yeah.
We're liable you multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good argument, Caleb. Certainly, the designers, Scott Cawthorn, who did the designs of the original Five Nights at Freddy's monsters, wow, really blew it out of the water, and just so many versions of those characters that are amazing. I do think that I'm going to give the leg up to H.R. Geiger and his xenomorph design. I just think it's much more creative and a much more interesting design from the whole lifespan of the alien, from the face hugger coming out of the egg to the actual xenomorph, which has got some like very scary like sexual elements to it, and has the mouth coming out. I mean, these are some amazing components to the design. The Alien Queen is a masterful design as well. As amazing as Freddy Fazbear is and the whole crew, they are just animals. It's just a teddy bear with a top hat. It's just a chick. It's just a rabbit. If I dare say, it's just a fox. They're just animals. I mean, are you going to argue that they're more creative and unique designs than the masterful work that Ridley Scott and H.R. Geiger did?
Yes. Because, especially in the second one, we get the marionette. And the marionette not only is also a really cool design that isn't animal-based, but it can possess people. And that is terrifying. Shout out to the xenomorph, but the xenomorph isn't possessing people and controlling their actions. I guess the face hugger latches onto you, but then it just, fucks off and dies.
There's much more to it than that. I mean, it implants the alien embryo into your stomach and it explodes out of you. I find that to be much more scary than the marionette having possession over you and then just leaving your body. If the alien leaves your body, you're dead.
Well, I would argue that some fates are worse than death. And being controlled by a marionette and being forced to kill your family members and people you love?
Yes.
That is horrifying.
I was shaking in the cinema when the marionette first came out of the present, so you got me there a little bit,
I think Vanessa might just be a better heroine than Ripley. And I think that for a few reasons, because in Alien, you're not really supposed, obviously with hindsight, we know that Ripley's going to be the final survivor. But if you could transport yourself into the cinema in 1979, that's not obvious. Like, I think part of the intrigue of the first movie is not knowing who the final survivor is going to be. So therefore, she's not as prominent of a character. Like, she's kind of more in the background for like the first half of that movie. So I don't think she's a super defined like personality in that movie. Mm-hmm. And then in the sequel, they kind of go the maternal route. They give her Newt to kind of latch onto and build that, you know, maternal dynamic between the two. And, you know, it leads to a pretty good moment, I guess, with the, you know, stay away from her, you bitch. Cool. But with Vanessa, we got that familial dynamic right from Jump Street. Right away, she's the daughter of William Afton. And, you know, in the second movie, she's dealing with all the trauma from that, like the nightmares, and then the reveal of her brother. Like, she comes from such a broken, twisted family. And, you know, I think a lot of people point to Aliens as kind of peak Ripley, and like, you know, she's like a mother, and we kind of give her a love interest. But with Vanessa, it's like, we didn't have to wait an entire movie to get that. We got that right from the first one. And then we built on it in the second one. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on out. Like, we're lapping you.
I mean, Vanessa is just a really interesting character. I will give you that. Very complex and definitely an Oscar-worthy performance, I would argue. So I'm not going to argue with you there. I did actually, I want to jump right into it. I was going to compare the characters in Alien and Aliens to their counterpart in the FNAF movies, and then I want to see what you think about this.
Okay.
In terms of showing who's better. So I will start with Vanessa because you already brought her up. I was trying to think of like, who is Vanessa's counterpart in Alien and Aliens? Who's she most similar with? And you bring up Ripley because they are, you know, both like the female lead of the movie. But like we know Mike the security guard is probably the main character of FNAF. So I find Vanessa's confusing actions in terms of constantly withholding information from her allies and screwing people over for no reason to be more similar to Ash in the first movie, where he's like this mysterious presence where you don't know his motives and he's withholding information to screw people over, who ultimately ends up being the villain. So I find it odd that her actions align more with the villain of Alien than the supposed heroine that she is. For all her talk about wanting to defeat William Afton, which, don't get me wrong, their relationship is so complex and interesting, and it did bring me to tears in the second one when they had their Inception-esque dream sequence where he says that she can't run from him. But I just find her actions to be a lot more like convenient and whatever the script needs in terms of screwing people over and withholding information rather than being natural. It almost makes her villainous. And I know she's a very complex character. The screenwriter really deserves all the kudos there as well. But we'll start with that one. I have more to get into, but
I really got to disagree with that. I see her indecisiveness more so as she's battling with the fact that William Afton is still her dad. Right. And there's kind of this tug of war within her where it's like she deep down objectively knows that she should help Mike fully. But at the end of the day, like, that's still her father. Right. Like, it's almost kind of, I would say, it's Anakin Skywalker-esque, where it's like he knows deep down that murdering younglings is bad. But, you know, Padme's his wife at the end of the day. And he's like, if this is what is going to save her, then maybe I have to do it, right? And I would compare a lot of her actions to that, where it's like she's trying to help Mike as much as she can without feeling like she's betraying her literal father, right? But unlike Anakin Skywalker, who took 6 movies to get to the point where he turned against the Emperor, she turns on him at the end of the first movie and, you know, risks her life to try to stop him and save Mike. So I actually think she has a complete character arc where, yeah, at the start of the movie, she was kind of indoctrinated into this like evil mindset from William. But then like she almost slowly progresses out of that by the end of the first movie. And in the second movie, we kind of see the fallout of that kind of indoctrination where, now that William, for now, is gone, she's left with the mental trauma and scars of that. And Ripley doesn't have as much of that, in my opinion, which is something that I think they could have capitalized on. That kind of PTSD of dealing with a xenomorph. Maybe she could have got like flashbacks or had like an Inception-esque sequence where
they actually did in Aliens. She has a dream sequence where she imagines it coming out of her chest and she wakes up.
True. Okay. True. Yeah.
So that did happen. But you do make a good point.
She doesn't talk to the xenomorph, right? Like we could have got like a nice Jurassic Park 3 moment where like,
that could have been,
instead of like Alan, it's like Ripley.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, that's a great point. In Jurassic Park 3, like, always good to bring that one up.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, maybe Ripley is not that good of a character. Except she is. Let's compare her to Mike the security guard. Mike the security guard, played by Josh Hutcherson. If we're gonna just one-to-one compare them, like, we have all these ways, like, how would you describe Ripley? She's like tough, she's resilient, she's intelligent, she has her principles. She's just a really strong, smart character. And how would you describe Mike, other than describing his relationship with other characters? Like, stupid? I don't want to dunk on Mike too much, but I think he's pretty one note. I don't think there's a lot going on there. I don't think he's a particularly strong lead character. He's just kind of like whiny and irresponsible, if I dare say. I mean, Josh is, don't get me wrong, another Oscar-worthy performance that was potentially snubbed. But Sigourney Weaver did get an Oscar nomination, and so they might have seen something that you're not seeing.
Okay, so with Mike, sometimes it's nice to have a flawed lead character, because at the end of the day, we're all flawed individuals. If we were in these horrific scenarios, we'd probably make mistakes.
We'd be more like Mike than Ripley.
Yeah, whereas Ripley, I would say, is almost like an altruistic character in some ways, where it's like she just like has the answer and like the right response to everything.
Right. That's not how we'd all be. We'd be more like Mike.
At the start of the movie, FNAF 1, Mike sees like a father like scolding their child, and he just like assaults them within an inch of their life. That's like flawed human behavior.
We would all do that.
He has PTSD from, losing his brother and his upbringing. And kind of like with Vanessa, we see the scars of their past kind of come out in how, they are as flawed individuals. So in some ways, I would say it's a more realistic and relatable performance.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, Mike's definitely the like audience insert character. I mean, in the games, you literally are playing as Mike, so like that makes total sense. And also, like, maybe I'm not giving Mike enough credit. Like, it's just the bravery he had to just randomly assault that man in the mall. I mean, I wouldn't have done that.
That man could have had a knife, a gun. He could have been armed.
Yeah. You know who does have a gun? Vanessa. At spin class.
Yeah, Vanessa showing up to spin class armed was a decision. But also, I think that...
She's resourceful.
Well,
now I'm arguing for your movie.
Yes, well, it's such a strong position that we're both arguing for.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes. But she was so scarred from William Afton that even after he's dead, she's showing up to spin class locked and loaded because she's worried that he might be lurking around the corner. I think that speaks volumes.
Right.
And then I guess, since we're going character for character, I feel like you kind of sidestepped the monster v monster of it all. And, the xenomorphs, they're intimidating, don't get me wrong, but what's their iconic line?
Yeah, they're not saying much.
It's like you're saying something, but what do you read?
They're actually saying nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a whole lot of, but not a lot of is being communicated. Whereas, are you kidding me?
That's saying a lot.
Absolute cinema.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, it did hurt me to kind of dunk on Freddy Fazbear at the beginning, just because it's Freddy Fazbear.
His top hat is phenomenal, and I will not hear any slander about it.
Listen, Caleb, I was just saying, I think the creativity and design of a teddy bear with a hat, I mean, it works for Freddy, but is it as creative as the xenomorph? Well, that's what I was arguing.
Well, the brilliance of it is that, actual bears don't wear top hats. right? So like
That's
it
true.
actually takes a lot of imagination to like even think of that, right? Because like human beings wear clothing, like animals don't.
Yeah, that's a point.
Like at most dogs do. That's just because people want to put like hoodies on their pit bull or whatever. But
Yeah.
you're not putting hoodies on like a bear, you know?
Right.
Especially not a grizzly bear. You kidding me? You see a grizzly bear, you're supposed to run. I'm not supposed to put a top hat on it. Come on.
I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. I do think like if we're doing more one-to-one comparisons, I was thinking about the face hugger and like how scary that thing is when it like latches on you, like wraps its tail around your neck and inserts that alien down your throat. Are you gonna argue? I think its comparison in FNAF is potentially the cupcake. Is the cupcake as scary as the face hugger?
I'd say the cupcake or the marionette, if we're going.
Well, because the marionette's like the puppet, literally the puppet leader, puppet master of the gang. I think the puppet is more similar to the alien queen because the alien queen's kind of running things.
Yeah.
The cupcake's kind of like the lackey.
I would actually say more so the act of becoming one of the animatronics is more closely related to the face hugger.
Okay.
Because it's more so like William Afton is the face hugger who's like putting these children inside of the animatronic suit, and then they're like getting crushed and like their soul is like merging with this animatronic. Like I think that's the most comparable process, and I would argue that it's like pretty equally traumatizing. Like the idea, because like with the face hugger, it's like attacking adults, right? So like an adult can is more prone to deal with like traumatic events. Like you're not surviving.
It latched onto the kids and tried to get Newt. It was trying to eat Newt.
Okay, yeah, but like that's one kid versus like many.
Well, because there's only one kid in the movie, but
which sounds like a creative issue.
Yeah, it could be. But would you argue that although the process of being stuffed into the suit is quite scary, would you argue that the way the film portrays it is as scary as the way the films in Alien and Aliens portray the violent nature of being impregnated basically by the alien and killed from the inside? That is so violently and scary, and as a horror movie, I think it's more important to have these visceral images, and just like I feel like the frightening aspect of that happening to you is a lot scarier than how FNAF portrays, because it's a squeaky clean kids PG-13 movie, so there's no blood. We don't actually see the kids go into the suits. It's all just like talked about and implied. I don't think it's as scary the way it's portrayed in the movies as it is in Alien and Aliens.
You know, especially with horror movies, sometimes the less you see of the monster, the scarier it gets.
Yes.
And I actually think some of the kind of misery and like horrificness of it is implied, which I think to an extent that works well, because it's almost like what your mind can imagine is like more scary than what can be put on screen. And through seeing what happens to William Afton at the end of the movie and how visceral like all like the metal going into him is, it kind of paints the picture of what would that look like with like a child who's like much smaller and weaker, like how visceral that would be. So it almost creates this horrific image in your mind that's like scarier than what could be put to screen.
It is very scary, and yeah, I mean, I was definitely like kind of peeking from behind my fingers when we saw both of the kids' movies in theaters. But I do want to talk more about the character comparisons. So let's talk about the kid in both of these. More, I'm talking about Aliens. We have Newt in Aliens, and we have Abby in FNAF 1 and 2. Are we gonna argue that Abby's actually better? I mean, Abby's an actual idiot. Hold on. Abby's really dumb. I mean, so she has all this terrible experience in the first movie, and then her inclination is to fall for all the tricks from Chica in the second movie, and basically put herself in another dangerous situation. She doesn't tell anybody she's leaving. She just goes back to the pizzeria and basically sets herself up to get murdered, versus Newt, who survived by herself on the planet with all these aliens running around until Ripley and crew got there. So she's like a very independent survivor, whereas Abby is just like asking herself to get stuffed in a suit. And I think like, gotta say, that's not very smart of her to fall for all those tricks.
All I can say is, wow, I am flabbergasted. I am blown away by the Abby disrespect that I just witnessed. I mean, imagine being such a young child and going through such a traumatic experience. But then also, the animatronics at the end were on her side. They killed William Afton. They helped her. And, you know, being such an isolated child who only really has one friend in the second movie, you know, when your big brother / like, you know, parental guardian figure is like neglecting you, you know, like, I think it makes some sense.
I feel like just there you admitted that Mike kind of sucks. You were arguing how great Mike is.
No, I was arguing that Mike is a flawed and realistic character. I think all of these characters are flawed and somewhat realistic, and I don't think making questionable decisions, especially in a horror movie, because there's a lot of questionable decisions that get made in Alien. And also, if we're going character for character, you have an Ash, we have a Mr. Berg. And Mr. Berg is a better secondary antagonist, in my opinion. Like, when Ash gets his comeuppance, like, you know, it's like, okay, like, it's cool. Like, it's like a fun thing. You're, like, rooting against him. But when Mr. Berg gets his head crushed, like, you want to talk about, A, visceral, and B, like, I mean, we were in the theater opening weekend.
People screamed.
We saw that. Like, I was dressed up as Nightmare Freddy. He was dressed up as Toy Chica. And we both just couldn't help but go, because it was absolute cinema.
Yeah, and we stood.
Yeah, like we literally stood, and then the entire theater gave a round of applause. Like, it was incredible. I've never seen anything like that. I've seen Endgame and Infinity War opening weekend. I've never seen anything like that.
So I just gotta admit, or I just gotta say that if we're talking about, I mean, it was very scary, I'll give you that, but do you think that these movies, the FNAF movies, could have benefited from the R rating? Because I feel like they're almost scared to take the next level. There's no blood. They didn't even show him dying on screen. Whereas I feel like just the visceral nature of the alien creature and how it kills and attacks people in the first two movies, it's just so like frightening and effective. Whereas I feel like they're just shying away from it always in FNAF 1 and 2 to the point where it's like losing its scare value to me.
I have to disagree with that. I think most of the kills happen off screen in the first Alien. When the alien is like dangling from the ceiling and grabs the crew member, like that, largely we see that from the cat. Like, we just see Jonesy the cat while that's happening, and we see like the shadows. When Dallas dies, we just see a glimpse of the xenomorph, then like it cuts away. It's like static.
Yes, but what about Kane?
Okay, we get Kane, but like we get William Afton in FNAF. Like, you know, like I don't think it's that different, because with like the Jonesy the cat kill, we just see kind of the shadow, and that's almost reminiscent of FNAF when we see the shadow of the person getting bit in half by Freddy Fazbear.
So you don't think that FNAF, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big FNAF fan, and honestly, I wanted to argue for that, but he wouldn't let me. So I do want to ask, like, do you think that, I think the aliens do better at tension building rather than the cheap jump scares that FNAF 1 and 2 kind of lean on as a crutch. I think they're afraid to create more tension. It's very obvious what's coming at all times, and I think the scares and the tension isn't as earned, because maybe, do you think that director, I want to hear your take on this. So we got Ridley Scott, who did the first movie, and we got for Alien, and then we have James Cameron do the second movie for Aliens. Do you think Emma Tammy's in that conversation?
Okay, so to be fair, when Ridley Scott first directed Alien, he wasn't Ridley Scott yet. You know, and like there's a reason he wasn't brought back for the second film, even though the first movie was really successful. No, the first movie was really successful and he did a good job. But he wasn't such a name at that point that it's like, oh, you have to bring him back for the sequel.
Yeah.
Because even though like Blade Runner became a cult classic, it was a dud when it first came out, and critics hated that movie when it first came out. Kind of like the Thing, where like for some reason people were just like, oh, this movie sucks, even though it didn't suck. So, you know, comparing, you know, Emma Tammy to Ridley Scott today is different than comparing her to Ridley Scott in 1979.
Oh, so we think she's going to have a Best Picture winner in the future?
It's possible. We don't really know what the future holds. And I would say the fact that, you know, she was brought back for the sequel and Ridley Scott wasn't, does speak a little bit. And then, you know, to be fair, James Cameron was already James Cameron by the time he did Aliens. But I think the fact that you didn't need to bring in like this juggernaut of a director for the sequel also kind of speaks to the film quality. Because you can almost say that's a bit of a gimmick, right? Where it's like, if Emma Tammy got canned after the first one and they were like, let's bring in Jordan Peele to do the second one.
Right.
Like,
They trusted their director.
Not that Jordan Peele would direct a bad FNAF movie. I'm sure he could direct a very good FNAF movie. But to me, that's almost like...
Every time he's moving different.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think a little bit of it is like... it's like, we need something to like kickstart like discourse before this movie comes out.
Right.
I also want to get into, kind of going off of that, the lore. Because with a horror franchise, right, we're arguing the best start to a franchise. Having lore is very important because, making a one-off horror film, a lot of these horror franchises start as one-offs and they're not really, at the moment or the time of that initial release, planned to become this massive thing. Right? So then you kind of have to build lore as you go.
Yep.
And Prometheus is ass. I'm just going to come out and say it. Prometheus is...
We're not talking about
I know,
Prometheus.
we're not arguing about Prometheus. But the fact that Prometheus is hot garbage, dumpster juice, throw it away, get it out of my face, that creates a scenario with Alien where it's like, there's all this kind of intrigue and mystery surrounding like the planet that they land on and what created the facehugger. That you either have to ignore the lore and it just remains a mystery, or you have to accept that the answer is garbage. Whereas FNAF, we get a lot of the lore explained in the first two movies, and it's really good. And it gives you a better building block to build off of. So even though we're not counting Prometheus and its hot garbage dumpster juiceness in this debate and discussion, the fact that the lore is so much more interesting and more easily built upon, I think is a pro for FNAF. I would compare it to the prequel Star Wars trilogy and the sequel trilogy. There's mistakes made in both, but one of the big things that I think speaks volumes is that you are able to create lore and build off of the lore with the prequels much better, right? We get the Clone Wars. There's like nothing that you can do with the sequel trilogy. So even though maybe you could objectively say that both have storytelling faults, the fact that the lore gives you so much more to build off of.
Yeah. The lore, it is really fascinating lore, and like we both spent like hours like diving into it. Weeks, months, years,
decades,
and we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna come to each of these FNAF movies in the future with our theories prepped and ready, and we'll see how it goes. But do you think that, since it's just a two movie comparison, do you think that the FNAF movies rely too much on the games to understand the lore? Because I think just the movies, if you haven't played the games, the way that the powers of the animatronics work are a little inconsistent and confusing if you are not familiar with the deep lore the way that you are. Put yourself in the perspective of the typical audience member.
No, I have to disagree, because I showed these movies to my girlfriend who willingly watched them, and she loved them. And she's never played a second of any of the games. I just was like, hey, you want to watch Five Nights at Freddy's? And she was like, what's that? And I was like, oh, are you in for a treat? Threw it on and she was engrossed. She didn't look at her phone once during the movie. And as soon as we finished the first one, I was like, there is a sequel. There is another. And she was like, well, are you going to hit play on it? Like, I have to see it. And I think, the fact that someone who knew nothing about the lore or the franchise, going into the first movie, got so engrossed and latched onto it, I think that speaks to the fact that the movies are a great translation of the game. Is a translation of the game that kind of gives the fan service to the people who have knowledge of the game, but because it's a good translation of the game, it means it can also be your entry point.
Alien has, I would say, more simplistic lore, and I would say to a detriment and to its benefit. It's not as maybe like cerebral as FNAF, but it is very clearly defined in those first two movies. And I do want to suggest that maybe they rushed FNAF 2. It came out so you're saying it came out so quick. I think they planned out and they made a very good different sequel with aliens. Whereas I feel like with FNAF they just like tried to strike while the iron was hot and while the property is so popular, and they just wanted to kind of like shit out a more nonsensical movie that just throws the animatronics in front of the screen, says, hey, you remember that from the game, and relies solely on that for your enjoyment rather than telling a cohesive story.
I gotta really push back against that because, wow, I don't think there's anything rushed or half-baked in the sequel. I think Mr. Berg is such a great secondary antagonist. The introduction of William Afton's son, incredibly done. His kind of look that he has.
His camera.
Absolute cinema. No, and then, I think it kind of naturally builds off of the first one. I mean, if we're going to say that Aliens is such a different and unique film because there's like more of them and it's more of like an action film, there's more action in FNAF 2 as well. There's triple the monsters. We got the OGs. We got the toy versions. We got the mangled versions. We got the marionette, which is an additional antagonist who can also possess people, so it's a little different. We also have Mr. Berg, who's an additional antagonist. And just to go on a little bit more about Mr. Berg, one of the most villainous moments in the entire franchise isn't even a death scene, which I think is quite fascinating. When he takes her, built like robotic animatronic and smashes it. Oh no, I guess I'll just give you an A. Like that, like we both looked at each other and were like, what the fuck? This is like,
yeah, that was intense.
That's starring.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think there's anything rushed about it. And also, I think the ending of FNAF 2 sets up FNAF 3 much better than the ending of Alien 2. Aliens sets up Alien Q.
But doesn't have to set it up, because Alien 3, as we both know, is not very good. Aliens was kind of closing the book on... I always see Alien and Aliens as kind of a duology, because I don't consider the rest to be very worthwhile of anyone's time. I do feel like it's more closing the book on the movie, whereas FNAF 2 is relying on there being a third movie for any of this shit to make sense. And I'm just saying this because I'm a big FNAF fan, but like we got to put ourselves in the perspective of the general audience, like people who aren't spending time on the clock at work looking through the lore. There's not everyone's doing that. I also want to ask you, what would you say is there a quote in FNAF 1 and 2 that is better than "Get away from her, you bitch," since you brought it up earlier, and what is it, if so?
I think
that one.
Yeah, I think it's slapping.
Yeah,
that personally.
Specifically when Freddy Fazbear says it, or when the plush of Freddy Fazbear?
Specifically when the plush says it. For me, that is like arguably, I think that's like one of the most cinematic moments in horror history. But also
because speaking right to us, the fans, like
exactly, and
we get that that's funny.
I think we need to get to the heart of what the argument here is. It's the best start to a horror franchise, not the best start to a horror duology, right? Or like a 2-movie run, right? It's like, what was the best launching off point for a horror franchise? Right. And that's where I do think, setting up the third movie is very important. Right, and sure, Alien Cubed, or Alien 3, I like to call it Alien Cubed because of how they made the 3. They could have like just used the characters from Aliens and not killed all of them off, and it would have been like much better. I guess spoilers for Alien 3 if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't watch it. They didn't have to kill all the interesting characters off, so that is more so on Alien 3, but at the same time, it's like they're just all going into their slumber, and we'll find them somewhere. Whereas FNAF 2, Vanessa's possessed. She just got her heart broken by Mike. And like Springtrap is coming back. So we have like the holy trinity of like evilness, right? We got William Afton as Springtrap,
Right.
his son, and a possessed Vanessa.
Right.
Like that is such a force. Whereas with aliens, Queen Xenomorph is dead. They won, right? And then also I think this goes into stakes. The stakes are much higher in the FNAF series because in Alien, you can just blow up the ship. I mean, sure, you're gonna die, but like Earth is gonna be fine. Like you're in the vacuum of space. Xenomorph can't survive in the vacuum of space. We saw that at the end of the movie. Aliens nuke the planet. It's like this random colony, or just don't start the colony.
But if not, we're on Earth.
Exactly.
So you can't nuke the
If
planet.
it was ever on Earth, but it wasn't. Whereas in FNAF, we're on Earth. You can't nuke the pizzeria. It's on Earth. You're forced to deal with the antagonist.
Yeah, that's true.
In a real way.
And when there's like Freddy Fazbear festivals, like it adds this whole element of we don't even know who the animatronics are. Like it could just be someone in the costume.
It's very Halloween-esque.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like Michael Myers can walk around because he's like in a mask.
Right, because this town inexplicably has Freddy Fazbear festivals and
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
yeah, so
I have one final point. I guess I'll, curtail this into a closing statement to really emphasize my stance on FNAF being the greatest start to a horror franchise that we've ever seen in the history of cinema. For me, it also just looks better. And I know that Alien was made in the late 70s and Aliens was in the late 80s, but how well the animatronics look and like the kind of mix of CGI and
they are both pioneers of practical effects.
I would agree with that. And just like the mangled Foxy, mangled Freddy, Toy Chica, like the fact that they were able to make 3 versions of all of them but look distinct, right? Like I think that's just so impressive. And it really, we're arguing for the start of a franchise, and looking forward, like I'm really looking forward to Possessed Vanessa, Springtrap, Nightmare Freddy. Like I'm just looking forward to all of this stuff. Whereas, at the end of Aliens, you're like, yeah, they could make another movie, or they don't have to, right? Like it kind of leaves it ambiguous.
I mean, this is only helping your argument, but I was just gonna say, do we want to talk about finally like the music?
Oh yeah,
Like I think it's Alan Silvestri and James Horner do Alien and Aliens, but whoever the composer, but there are just so many great. I was afraid to bring this up because I feel like it would just put the final nail in my coffin in terms of my argument, but all those great songs like It's Been So Long and the Have a Bite with Us and all these great FNAF songs that have been created by some of the fans that were included in the movie. For a fan like myself, it was very exciting to see, but these songs are they're just incredible. I just wanted you to touch on them a little bit. Like, do you listen to them in the car when you go to work?
My personal favorite is Nightmare Freddy.
The rap, that was good.
I'm Nightmare Freddy and I'm in your head. I'm Nightmare Freddy and I'm in your bed. It's incredible. I think that should be the end credit song for the third one.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
I think as a shoe-in.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, there should be like a plush stuffed animal where like you pull on the string and it like sings the Nightmare Freddy rap.
But are you listening to these songs in the car to work more than you're listening to the Alien soundtracks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's like, is a day really a day if you don't listen to Nightmare Freddy? Like it's certainly not a good day. Well, if you guys made it this far, please let us know in the comments. Who do you think won the debate? And, which duo of horror movies do you think was the best launching off point for a horror franchise? Okay, mask off. I'm taking the mask off.
Much like in the game, Five Nights at Freddy's.
I do not actually think anything that I said in this video
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, in case the laughter that kind of snuck out here and there didn't expose that.
I also just obviously we know which two are better. I very much wanted to play this from the perspective of somebody who's on the ropes here. I had a whole list of plot holes I was gonna bring up from the movies, but I figured what fun would that be? We're trying to prop FNAF up here from Caleb and my perspective. So yeah, it was a good time. We do enjoy these movies, actually. Funny enough.
Unironically, we actually have had a great time in the movie theater watching FNAF and FNAF 2. I was not dressed up as Nightmare Freddy, and Danny was not dressed up as Toy Chica. But we did have a lot of fun seeing it opening weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like, I would say so bad they're good movies, but they kind of take themselves too serious to be in that category.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think the third one has a chance to be super off the rails and actually like achieve that so bad it's good status.
We'll see. We'll be there.
But
We'll be there.
yeah, sorry if you're like a diehard FNAF fan and like actually think it's better than the start of the Alien franchise. You're wrong. I'm sorry. If you clicked on this video and was hoping for like a legitimate argument, I just like being sarcastic sometimes. So I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of an experience.
Yes.
If you did, there will be a playlist with all of my other movie debates in the description. All of them are much more serious than this one.
Just trying to have some fun.
Yeah, you might find something else you like. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace.
I'm Nightmare Freddy, and I'm in your head.